Betty was a clown. You know, she would play to the audience, and I can remember her back to going to Mary Tyler Moore filmings when I was a kid. She had a gift for almost immediately getting the audience on her side. So one of the other actresses would blow a line, and she'd look up to the crowd, and they would roar with laughter. You know, somebody forgot her lines. I don't know. Maybe someone here should have spent a little more time learning their lines. Those sorts of things. So she just was a doll. However, B. Arthur was quite the opposite. I mean, very kind of introverted, not at all what you would expect. Very kind of a little bit, I don't want to say tortured, but very, very professional, a little bit nervous, and didn't know how to play to the crowd. And it drove her a little bit crazy that Betty had this ease with the people. So those two kind of energies clashed a little bit. For the most part, they created a very real tension in a good way that was present in the show. Rue was more of a kind of a, you know, method actory kind of person. I mean, as you might guess from, you know, what we all know about her. I think she was married 5 times. You know, it's a little bit more of an actressy actress. And Betty used to say, like, I don't know how I wound up with these two. I've got Sandra Bernhard over here and Eleanor Duza over here, and I'm Soupy Sales. How did we all end up on the same stage together? But they were, you know, they were great. You know, Estelle Getty was, you know, it was her big moment. She wasn't great at learning lines. You know, we used to say that that purse that she carried around was, you know, the most valuable thing on the entire show. Not just because it instantly gave you a character, an old lady who can't be anywhere without a purse, but also most of the time she had her lines written on her purse so that she could remember them. And, you know, there was one time where she had about a page-long speech, and there was about a 2% chance she was going to get all the way through this thing without blowing it. And we were sitting, at that time, you stayed in a booth because it was all on tape, and watched it on monitors. And we were watching it, her go into this thing, just waiting for her to blow. And she, you know, cruised through the first 2 or 3 sentences. She was fine. And then she got to about the halfway point, and people sat up in their chairs like, is she actually going to make this? And then she's sort of rounding the clubhouse turn, and it's, wow, she's actually doing this. And then there was this sound that was getting in the way, and it suddenly became clear that it was a snoring sound. Who was snoring? This is never going to happen again, that she's going to get all the way through the speech. Who was snoring? And Tony Thomas took a Coke or something, and he threw it at the monitor because we couldn't use the take, and he went storming out onto the floor, and it was his own mother who had fallen asleep in the front row and completely ruined this take. Well, they were protective. I mean, for example, Betty would never say Rose is stupid. She would say she's naive or she's trusting. And I think that's fair. I mean, actors never want to play stupid characters, but there was a sweetness that I think shone through in that character that you know, proves her right, that she was sort of trusting and came from this place where people are a little bit simpler, and so stupid wouldn't have been the right word. I think B, I mean, there were a lot of jokes that we did about her being a little bit masculine, tall and deep voiced, and she was an incredible good sport about this stuff. And I think that was a mistake we made, to be a little bit insensitive to someone who is an extremely sensitive person. You would, again, that's not her persona, so everyone sort of thought she can deal with this, but it was, I think we pushed that a little bit far, and I think she let it be known she didn't love that. But she was professional. She did everything she was asked to do. In fact, I can remember a time at a run-through when, and this is a run-through, this is 2 days before the audience is coming in to film it, she disappeared behind the set, and we heard this sound. It was her weeping. And like, oh no, what happened? And it was just that she couldn't make a moment work. She couldn't quite, you know, get a scene or a speech to be what she wanted it to be. And she was mad at herself. And I thought, wow, that's a level of professionalism that you don't see that often. This is not in front of the audience. This is just a run-through. anyway, protective of her. Yeah, she didn't want to just be mannish. She wanted to have kind of a more sensitive dimension. And I think Rue the same way. I mean, Rue used to say, we make a lot of jokes about me being sort of a runaround or a little slutty or something, but we actually, in the first 2 or 3 seasons, saw her with fewer men than either Dorothy or Rose, I think. So she wanted to, wanted it to just to be about love as much as sex, those sorts of things. But for the most part, they were very happy to play what was given to them. They got along well. Occasionally you would see B. Arthur and Estelle Getty driving off to lunch in B's Jaguar, and it was cute. I mean, because she's this tall and she's this tall, and it really looked like a mother taking her, or a woman taking her elderly mother out to lunch. They had a sort of a funny bond, and they all got along. I mean, I think there was a tiny bit of conflict between Betty and B, just because their personalities were so different. But it was never an overt, difficult thing for anybody to deal with. It was just different personalities. They were all nice people.